Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by asking you to take a moment, just a brief moment, and let the quiet fill this space. Close your eyes if it feels right. Take a deep breath. No need to speak, no need to rush, just listen. In that silence, something powerful happens. It may feel uncomfortable, even a little foreign at first, but there's a quiet magic that we often overlook in a world that demands constant motion. The world teaches us to speak, to act, to hustle, but sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all. I'm here to share with you a simple truth: stay silent and everything will come to you naturally. It's not about doing less, it's about being and trusting that in the stillness, everything you need will make its way to you in its own time. First, let's think about the power of silence itself. Silence is not an empty void, it's the space where creativity, insight, and clarity are born. In the noise of our everyday lives, we miss the subtle, quiet messages that are always there waiting for us to listen. When we stop filling every moment with noise, we make room for the deeper truths within us. Now, I know what you're thinking. In a world that tells us we must be constantly moving, constantly doing, can we really afford to be still? The answer is yes. Sometimes in the quietest moments, the answers we've been chasing appear effortlessly. When we stop forcing, we begin to listen to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. We tune in instead of drowning out. Second, silence gives us the opportunity to pause. And in that pause, we create space for reflection. This is a practice that often gets lost in the rush of life, pausing long enough to ask ourselves the tough questions. Do I really want this? Am I on the path I should be on? What does my heart need right now? It's in these moments of stillness that we hear the answers we've been seeking, often without having to chase them. Think about the times when you felt most connected to your intuition, your inner voice. Was it in the midst of chaos, or was it in the quiet? In those quiet moments, we come to realize that we don't need to control everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let go. Third, when we stop trying to control every outcome, something incredible happens. Life unfolds in its own rhythm in ways we couldn't have predicted. The more we trust this flow, the more it carries us. And let me tell you, when you allow life to lead you, it often takes you to places far better than you could have imagined. Think of it like a river. We can't force the river to go faster or control which direction it flows. We can only trust that it will take us where we need to go. The same is true for our lives. The more we fight against the current, the harder it gets. But when we let go, we're carried effortlessly toward our destination. Fourth, silence gives us the space to reflect on who we are. To see ourselves not as we wish we were, or as others see us, but as we truly are. In the stillness, we connect to our deepest desires, our values, and our purpose. We no longer act out of fear or reaction, but from a place of clarity and intention. In silence, we become more aligned with our truest selves. But silence also invites us to be vulnerable. It asks us to sit with uncertainty and discomfort, to admit that we don't have all the answers. And that's okay, to say, I don't know, but I trust that the right answers will come when I need them. This is vulnerability in its purest form. And let me tell you, there is incredible strength in vulnerability. When we sit in silence, we also confront our fears. The fear of missing out, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being left behind. But here's the thing, silence doesn't just invite fear, it invites self-compassion. In those moments of stillness, we are reminded that we don't need to be perfect. We are enough just as we are. And so, as we close today, I want you to remember this: everything you need is already inside of you or on its way to you. It doesn't always come when you demand it, but in its own perfect timing. Trust that the right opportunities, the right people, the right moments will arrive, not because you chased them, but because you trusted the process. So I encourage you to embrace the silence. Trust that when you stop trying so hard, when you stop forcing, you will find everything you've been seeking. It will come to you naturally. Thank you. This speech is meant to be calming yet empowering and is structured to guide the audience through a reflective journey. By framing silence as an act of trust, wisdom, and vulnerability, it channels a message of acceptance and letting go, which can resonate deeply with audiences seeking clarity and peace. In the midst of a world that's always buzzing, always moving, always pushing, we often forget something incredibly powerful: the power of silence. We're told that success comes through action, that the louder we speak, the more we'll be heard, that if we just hustle harder, do more, and strive further, we'll find fulfillment. The world around us screams at us to keep moving, to keep pushing, to make noise. But what if I told you that some of the most profound truths in life are found not in doing, but in being? That sometimes the key to finding what you need, what you've been searching for, is not in the action, but in the stillness. Think about the last time you paused, really paused, not just stopped for a moment to check your phone or catch your breath, but truly deeply stopped. Maybe it was in a quiet moment in nature or when you were sitting alone with your thoughts. It's in these moments that we discover something extraordinary. It's in the quiet that we find clarity. In the stillness, we can hear the whispers of our own hearts, our true desires, the things we've buried beneath the noise of everyday life. But silence is often misunderstood. We think of it as an absence, something empty, something uncomfortable. But what if I told you that silence is a presence? That it's in the quiet that we find the room to grow, to reflect, to heal. Silence doesn't mean inactivity or passivity. It's a kind of presence that allows everything else to settle, allowing what is meant to rise to the surface. It's like a pond where the stillness allows the water to clear and the reflection to appear. In a world where we're taught to always speak up, make our voices heard, take action, we forget that some of the most profound answers come in the absence of noise. Silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the space where we allow things to emerge. It's where intuition whispers, where truth speaks, where wisdom rises. Imagine if we gave ourselves permission to embrace that space, to sit in that silence. How many answers have we missed because we were too busy to listen? How many opportunities have passed us by because we were too caught up in the rush to notice them? The power of silence is the power of presence. It's about being with yourself, being with your thoughts, being with your heart, without the pressure to perform, without the need to act. And in that stillness, you might find the most unexpected things coming to you, answers you didn't know you needed, peace you didn't know was possible, connections you weren't even seeking. So when the world tells you to speak louder, do more, be more, remember this: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to simply be still. Let the world come to you in its own time. Trust that in the silence you will find what is meant for you. Sometimes the greatest strength is in the quietest moments. We live in a world that praises constant movement, that celebrates the busyness of our lives. Our calendars are packed, our to-do lists are never ending, and we are always on the go, always striving, always reaching, always doing. But what if the key to unlocking our true potential, to finding peace, to making the right decisions, wasn't in the relentless forward motion, but in the simple act of pausing? Pausing is often seen as a luxury, something we do when we've finished or when we're exhausted, as if it's a momentary break from the real work. But what if pausing wasn't just something to do after you've pushed yourself to the brink? What if pausing was the work? What if the most important thing you can do is to stop for a moment and let everything settle inside and out? Think of it like this: when we're caught up in the rush, when we're constantly moving from one task to the next, our minds become cluttered, we're distracted, overstimulated, and overwhelmed. And in that noise, it's easy to lose touch with what really matters. The clarity we seek, the insights we need, and the answers we long for aren't always found in the hustle and bustle. They are often found in the quiet pauses between the actions. It's in those moments of stillness that we can catch our breath, take a step back, and allow space for the things we've been pushing away to rise to the surface. Have you ever noticed how, when you take a moment to pause, the world seems to slow down? Time feels different when you stop trying to control it. In those pauses, we often see things we couldn't see before, patterns we missed, connections we hadn't made, or feelings we'd buried deep down. Pausing gives us perspective. It allows us to reconnect with our deepest truths. It helps us ask the important questions: is this where I want to be? Is this what I truly need? Is this decision aligned with who I really am? A pause doesn't just give us time to think, it gives us time to feel. In a world that pushes us to act quickly, we often forget that emotions are not something to rush through. They need space to breathe, to be acknowledged, and to guide us. When we pause, we allow our feelings to catch up with us, to give us the insight we need before we take the next step. The beauty of pausing is that it doesn't require any special skill, any special tools, or any extraordinary effort. All it requires is a willingness to stop, to create a little space between the noise and the action, and to let ourselves exist in that quiet, uncertain moment. Pausing doesn't mean giving up on progress or sitting idle. It means giving yourself permission to tune into what really matters before you keep pushing forward. It's not about doing less. In a world that celebrates talking, expressing opinions, sharing ideas, making ourselves heard, it's easy to forget the power of listening. We're taught from a young age that speaking up is the way to make an impact, to assert ourselves, to be seen. But listening, real, deep listening, is where the true magic happens. It's in listening that we find wisdom, connection, and understanding, not just with others, but with ourselves. Think about the last time you really listened, not just heard the words someone was saying, but truly listened to the meaning behind those words, to the feelings that lived underneath them. When you listen with full presence, with no agenda, no judgment, you open up a space where people feel seen, heard, and understood. And here's the incredible thing in that space: you often find that the wisdom you're searching for begins to emerge not only from others, but from within you too. We often think of wisdom as something external, something we have to go out and find. We read books, take courses, ask for advice, and seek out experts. But the most profound wisdom, the kind that truly changes our lives, often comes when we listen not just to others, but to ourselves. When we take the time to really hear the quiet, intuitive voice inside, we find guidance that's always been there, waiting for us to notice. Listening is not a passive act. It requires presence. It demands that we put aside our own thoughts, our own judgments, and our need to respond immediately. It asks us to create space for someone else's story, for someone else's truth, and to hear them without interruption, without the rush to fix or advise. The truth is, most of the time, people don't need us to solve their problems. They need us to listen, to hold space for their emotions, their experiences, and their struggles. In this simple act, we validate their feelings, we honor their experiences, and we create a connection that transcends words. When we listen with empathy, when we lean into the other person's words with an open heart, we start to notice things we would have otherwise missed. We hear the unsaid, the emotion behind the words, the fear beneath the bravado, the hope hidden in the vulnerability. And in this process, we come to understand not just the other person, but ourselves as well. We realize that we are all interconnected in our desires, in our struggles, and in our dreams. We begin to see the world through a more compassionate, more open lens. But listening also teaches us how to listen to ourselves. We often ignore our own inner voice in the noise of the world. We drown out our intuition with the distractions of life and then wonder why we feel disconnected, lost, or confused. Listening to yourself means paying attention to your body, your heart, and your emotions, trusting that they hold the answers you've been looking for. It means slowing down enough to hear your own wisdom, your own truth, and then giving yourself the courage to act on it. True listening is a gift. It requires patience, vulnerability, and humility. It means letting go of the need to control the conversation, to fill every silence, or to offer unsolicited advice. It's about being fully present in the moment, embracing the uncertainty. We live in a world where control is often seen as the key to success. We're taught that in order to get what we want, we need to plan every step, manage every detail, and make sure we're always in the driver's seat. control feels safe. It gives us the illusion that we're in charge, that we can dictate the outcome of our lives, that we're not at the mercy of circumstances or other people. But here's the truth: the more tightly we try to hold on to control, the more we miss the beauty and possibility that lies in surrender. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean resigning ourselves to passivity or abandoning our dreams. It means stepping into a deeper trust, the trust that we don't need to have everything figured out, that we don't need to control every outcome, and that sometimes the best thing we can do is release our grip and allow life to unfold. We all know the feeling of wanting to control every aspect of our lives, our careers, our relationships, our health. We think that if we just plan the right way, do the right things, and follow the rules, everything will fall into place. But here's what often happens: the more we push, the more we try to control, the more life seems to slip through our fingers. We exhaust ourselves, we create unnecessary stress, and we often find ourselves in situations that don't feel aligned with who we truly are. That's because control doesn't create freedom, it creates resistance. The truth is, life is unpredictable. We can't control everything that happens to us. We can't predict the twists and turns, the unexpected challenges, or the opportunities that might arise, but we can choose how we respond. And sometimes the wisest thing we can do is to stop trying to force things to happen. Letting go of control means trusting that the universe has its own timing, that things will fall into place when they are meant to, and that sometimes the best path is the one we didn't plan for. Think about the times in your life when you've tried to control everything. How did that feel? Did it feel like you were in flow, or did it feel like you were constantly swimming upstream, fighting against the current? Letting go of control isn't about being passive, it's about releasing the need to micromanage every detail. It's about accepting that you can't always predict the future, and that's okay. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in being able to say, I don't know exactly how this will turn out, but I trust that it will unfold as it should. Letting go of control also means embracing uncertainty, the courage to sit with the unknown, to not have all the answers. It's in these moments of uncertainty that we are forced to listen to our intuition, to feel our way forward, and to trust that we are supported, even when we can't see the whole picture. When we release the need to control, we open ourselves up to new possibilities that we might never have considered before. We create space for serendipity, for the unexpected gifts that come when we stop planning every single moment of our lives. There's a freedom in letting go. It's the freedom to live in the present moment, to take things as they come, and to trust that we have everything we need to handle whatever arises. It's the freedom to accept that we can't control everything, but we can control how we respond to life's challenges. When we stop gripping so tightly to the outcome, we make room for something even more powerful: the ability to experience life as it is, in all its messiness and unpredictability. Letting go of control doesn't mean we're giving up on our dreams or ambitions. It means we're freeing ourselves from the burden of perfection, the pressure to have everything planned out, and the fear of making mistakes. When we release our need to control, we open ourselves up to the flow of life, to the natural rhythm of things. We allow the right people, the right opportunities, and the right experiences to come to us, not because we're forcing them, but because we're creating space for them. In letting go of control, we make room for peace, we make room for joy, we make room for trust. So the next time you feel yourself gripping tightly to a situation, to a plan, or to an outcome, take a deep breath and remember, life doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be experienced. And the more we trust in the process, the more we find that life has a way of unfolding exactly as it should. There's a quiet, invisible force that moves through all of us, a force that carries us forward, that shapes the moments of our lives, that connects us to something larger than ourselves. It's the flow of life. It's the current that runs through the moments, the decisions, the twists and turns that we sometimes try so desperately to control. Yet so often we resist it, thinking we must force our way through life, that we need to push harder, do more, make things happen. But what if the most powerful thing we can do is stop fighting the flow and learn to trust it instead? Think of life as a river. It has its own rhythm, its own course, and often we don't get to decide which direction it flows. We spend so much time trying to swim against it, paddling harder, thinking if we just try harder, we'll get to where we want to be faster. But what if instead we stopped fighting the current and allowed ourselves to float? What if we stopped trying to control everything and trusted that even if we don't know exactly where the river is taking us, it will carry us exactly where we need to go? Trusting the flow of life doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for things to happen. It's not about being passive. It's about releasing the tight grip we often have on our plans and our expectations, and instead choosing to surrender to the process. It's about allowing things to unfold naturally, even when it feels uncertain, even when we can't see the destination. Because the truth is, there's so much we can't control, and when we stop trying to, we make room for something far greater than we ever could have imagined. So often, we get caught up in thinking that we must have it all figured out, that if we don't know the exact steps to take, we'll somehow fall behind, or worse, we'll fail. But the flow of life isn't a straight line. It's full of surprises, detours, and moments that take us in directions we never expected. And if we let it, life can take us to places far better than we ever thought possible. The challenge, of course, is trusting that it will, even when we can't see how. Think about the times in your life when you've tried to force something, whether it was a job, a relationship, or a plan, and it just didn't work out. You may have tried everything, pushed harder, and made every effort to make it fit, but it still didn't come together. Now, think about the times when you've let go, when you've trusted that things would unfold as they were meant to. Those moments often carry a certain magic with them, don't they? They don't always make sense in the moment, but with time you realize that letting go of control allowed you to be open to opportunities, to growth, to experiences you never would have had if you had insisted on doing things your way. Life's flow isn't always easy to trust. It requires vulnerability, patience, and faith. Sometimes the road ahead is unclear, and we feel unsure about the path we're on. But even in those moments of uncertainty, we are not alone. The flow of life is always moving through us, guiding us even when we can't see the full picture. We are part of something much larger than ourselves, a vast, interconnected web of experiences and people, each moment leading us to the next. When we trust that, we stop trying to force the pieces together and instead allow them to fall into place on their own. When we trust the flow of life, we begin to relax into the natural rhythm of things. We stop resisting, stop overthinking, stop trying to control every outcome. We move through life with more ease, more grace, and a sense of peace that comes from knowing we are exactly where we need to be, even when we don't understand why. Trusting the flow doesn't mean we don't make decisions or take action. It means we do so with a sense of surrender, with the understanding that we don't have to have everything figured out to move forward. In the end, trusting the flow of life is about faith. It's about trusting that even when things don't go according to our plans, life is still working for us, not against us. It's about knowing that the bumps in the road, the detours, the unexpected turns are all part of In the constant rush of our daily lives, where noise and distractions are ever present, it's easy to forget how powerful silence can be. We live in a world that demands action, movement, and answers fast. But in the midst of all this, there's an often overlooked gift: silence. Not the silence of avoidance or escape, but the silence that gives us the space to truly reflect on who we are, where we've been, and where we're going. When was the last time you allowed yourself to truly sit in silence without the need for anything to fill the space? No phone, no music, no conversations, no distractions, just you. The quiet, it's in this silence that we often find the room to breathe, to hear our own thoughts, to touch the truths we've buried under layers of busyness and expectation. Self-reflection, at its core, requires stillness. It requires the courage to sit in the quiet and face what is within us without the distractions or the noise that so often drown out our deepest thoughts. We think of reflection as something we do when we're looking back on our lives, but it's much more than that. Self-reflection is a tool for growth, a compass that guides us back to ourselves. It's in these quiet moments that we gain clarity about who we are, what we value, and what truly matters. Reflection allows us to ask ourselves the important questions we often don't take the time to consider when we're rushing from one thing to the next. What do I need right now? What have I learned from my past experiences? What direction do I want to go in? And am I aligned with that path? In silence, we are invited to take a step back and observe ourselves without judgment. We are given the space to look inward, to notice the patterns in our thoughts and behaviors that we might have missed in the noise of everyday life. This isn't always easy. The silence can sometimes bring up discomfort or emotions we'd rather not face, but in that discomfort there is wisdom. In the stillness, we uncover parts of ourselves we've ignored or pushed aside, parts of us that, once acknowledged, can lead us to deeper understanding and healing. When we are constantly in motion, when we're surrounded by distractions, it's easy to ignore the subtle signals our bodies, minds, and hearts are sending us. We push forward, thinking we're supposed to have it all together, thinking that taking a pause might be a sign of weakness. But in truth, silence is one of the most powerful tools we have for growth and self-awareness. It's in these moments of stillness that we come face to face with our true selves. It's where we can examine our fears, our desires, our limitations, and our strengths with honesty and compassion.